Playing music by myself is a completely different experience than playing with other people. And it provides a good challenge because I have no one else to hide behind. So it's sort of an exercise in vulnerability to play music on my own. And with this record specifically, I was trying to make something that was very minimal. I didn't necessarily follow the initial vision I had, but that was the basis of doing this, was to try to make something that was very stripped down and see if I could find the same essence in that and the same kind of energy that I get from playing in group situations. Not necessarily the same sound palette, but just trying to tap into the source of creative energy that I find exciting, that brings me joy, essentially. So yeah, I guess I could say it's an exercise in challenging myself and in vulnerability, and also just trying to expand on what I've done with playing guitar over the course of my life. I've been playing since I was, I think, 12 or so, and I want to continually find ways to reach further. I don't know if I had a goal specifically genre-wise. I listen to so many different kinds of music that inevitably I think all of that goes through my personal filter and comes out in what I make. And specifically with guitar-based solo music, there were certain kinds of sounds that I wanted to hear that I hadn't necessarily heard in what other people were making. That's not to say that what I've done is wholly original, because it's not. But I think that there are some ways in which more abstract music and, for lack of a better term, metal-oriented guitar playing haven't really been mixed together in the way that I've sort of wanted to hear it. Again, going back to what I was saying earlier, playing guitar has been a journey for me for most of my life now. And it started with listening to metal, and also especially to Jimi Hendrix as well when I was young. And through listening to that music, I found something that I hadn't found in any other area of life. And I think it was something that tapped into my unconscious, but also tapped into something that I feel like is spiritual. So for me, the genre signifiers of what I do isn't all that important. Part of it is my musical DNA, but what's most important to me is finding that initial same kind of ecstatic energy through playing. And sometimes that manifests as something that sounds like more akin to metal. Sometimes it's more like minimalist composition. But for me, I don't really set out to have this specific style in what I'm doing. It's more about trying to find the right feeling and let the feeling be the guide for what I'm doing. I started playing guitar, I think, when I was 11 or 12. A friend of mine, his father had an old Gibson acoustic, and we just started messing around with it. And I don't remember how I figured this out or if someone else showed me how to play it, but I remember learning how to play the intro to One, the Metallica song. And for me, that was a link between enjoying something and being able to actually do something, and discovering that there was a bridge between what I was hearing that was exciting to me and then finding that I could do that myself was very exciting, to say the least. And while learning the songs that other people made was kind of engaging for me after that, I soon discovered that what was most exciting for me was just making my own music. Sometimes it was improvisation. I mean, I started doing improvised guitar stuff shortly after I started playing. But then also when I started to develop a few more skills as a player, I realized I could write structured things as well. So the act of discovering guitar and playing was a moment of pretty profound empowerment for me, where I wasn't like a spectator to the things that I enjoyed. I was now becoming a participant in it. Well, part of what drew me to many different kinds of music that I've been interested in, whether it's harsh noise or death metal or whatever it may be, is the physicality of sound. Amplified sound is really personally attractive for me because it is a sound, but it also becomes a physical presence. And there's something to me about that I think is very necessary. I'm connecting through multiple senses at the same time. I'm hearing and listening. I'm using my body to make these sounds happen. I'm working in conjunction with electrical implements, and it creates a system, and that system feeds itself. So it's not just me enacting, it's me being part of something that then takes on a life of its own. So there's an element of chance in playing amplified music that I find really interesting, because I may have an idea and I may play a note, but what comes out of the amplifier is, just through the nature of what it is, already changed, and then it becomes a process of acting and reacting. So it's like a dialogue with the music, essentially. As I was saying earlier, I was trying to do something that was very spontaneous. I didn't have any preconceived plans about what I was going to do. So I would just start playing, listening to what was happening, and then build from there. And at the time that I started the record, it was actually pretty nerve-wracking because I wasn't able to have any objective view of what I was doing. And a lot of it made me feel very anxious and uncertain, which for me is usually a good sign, because it means that I'm stepping outside of what's comfortable for me and engaging with something that's at least in part unknown. So that's what I was hoping would happen in the studio. I wasn't necessarily happy about it at first. As I said, it made me feel pretty uncomfortable, and I didn't listen to the initial recordings for a while after that first session. I was kind of afraid of them, as I had spent 2 days and some money on doing this and wasn't convinced that there was anything good in it. And again, for me, it's this conversation with self and this experience of dialoguing with the music, and also in the instance of working in the studio, having another person as a participant. Even though this was solo music, Randall was there, he was listening, and I think more than anything else, his command to just play was super important, because there were times where I just wanted to stop, and he just encouraged me to keep going back in and keep playing. And I think that was probably the most important thing, because it forced me to just bring these things out of myself, and maybe getting rid of value judgment about whether it was good or bad was necessary for eventually getting to something that became the record. In the studio, I used a lot of the same stuff that I'm using live currently. I don't remember all the pedals I was using. Definitely the same amplifier, a Fryette, Pitbull, using, of course, I'm sure, some Death by Audio fuzz stuff, and Strymon Blue Sky reverb, which I use maybe too much on almost everything, and one of my electrical guitar company guitars. That's kind of my basic setup. I mean, just those components alone would be enough for me to play something in the solo context. But I also used a micro cassette recorder that was recording in the room, and then I was feeding that back through my pickups, using EBO. I don't remember what else. I mean, I started this record, I think 4 years ago, so yeah, it's hard to say. Again, I like challenges. I hit a wall maybe 10 or 12 years ago where I was touring a lot and playing songs the same way every night. Even though those songs initially had a lot of power for me, the more they were reproduced and copied, the less I found myself engaged with them. So even if there are times, as I was mentioning in the studio, where I felt anxious, and this also happens on stage, where I feel like maybe everything is falling apart and I've lost control, that to me is preferable to feeling like I'm just reiterating something that has already happened. So I prefer uncertainty and the possibility of failure rather than some kind of professional recreation of a pre-existing idea. That's not to say I don't enjoy playing structured music, because I very much do. I need a balance though, and there are times where I want to play only a part as it's supposed to be played, and there are other times where I just want to abandon structure altogether. I mean, every musician who is in our realm, whatever that may be, wants people to play things loud, and I think that that's largely true for my music. I think it's hard to really absorb what's going on unless you can feel it and unless you can hear a lot of the subtleties, because for me, that's where a lot of the interest lies, or in the small things that are happening. There's this main body of sound and sometimes of melody, but there's also these peripheral things that are happening, and for me, that completes the picture. And at low volume, that's obliterated. That said, I have learned to let go of trying to assume any control of what happens to my music once I've made it. I realize that people listen to it on laptop speakers, they listen to it in their cars. Some people have super hi-fi systems and they can hear everything. But I guess the most important thing for me is that the music function as a source of interest and hopefully happiness for people. And however they arrive at that, whether it's background music that allows them to concentrate on something else they're doing, or whether they're fully engaged with it, I don't really care. I'm just happy that they're listening, and I hope that they get something out of it.